You're listening to Community Radio, CKMS, Radio Waterloo, 102.7, 946 on the Rogers Digital Network. You can find us.
Good morning, Waterloo Region. It's Monday, July the 1st, 2019. Canada Day, the day when we celebrate the 152nd anniversary of the invasion, colonialization, and settlement of Turtle Island. We're listening to Six Celestial Spheres by Parallax Era. Parallax Era was our guest back in May, and they finally got an album out, and this is it.
I'm swallowing whites and they're crawling my skin. I'm digging a hole and I'm bound to jump in. And I know that I ain't getting very far. One false move and then I'll start with the imaginary part. Till I find you playing tricks of the heart. I'm watching the tide and it ain't coming in. I'll sink like a stone if you won't let me swim. And I know that I ain't getting very far. One false move and I'll start in the imaginary car. Till I find you playing tricks of the heart. I heard telling lies to the young is a sin. I'm wondering when that ship will come in. And I know that I ain't getting very far. One false move and then I'll start with the imaginary part. Till I find you playing tricks and I know that I ain't getting very far. One false move and then I'll start in the imaginary car. Till I find you playing tricks of the heart.
We're listening to Aaron Goldstein, or Goldstein perhaps. That Old Feeling from his new album, Esplanade. Got that released yesterday. Aaron Goldstein has spent the better part of a decade as a pedal steel guitarist to some of Canada's most revered songwriters. And more recently, producer to dozens of young artists and bands. But this Espanola LP has been in the works for just as long. The LP mines influences that could be called anything from college rock to power pop, with hefty nods to stoner and classic rocks and Americana. It is heavy on the formula of big riffs and hooks that will be familiar to fans of Goldstein's previous outfit, Huron, and a cast of friends and fellow side people appear throughout. So the LP also sees Goldstein covering most of every position in the band at various points. Good music. We'll be hearing a little bit more from Aaron Goldstein, possibly not today because we've got a studio full of guests. This is CKMS, Community Connections on CKMS FM Radio Waterloo, 102.7 on the FM dial. Started off the day by acknowledging that we are celebrating Canada Day, but is it really anything to celebrate? Sophia Kudriavstev, what have you got to say about that?
So I think it's really important when we talk about Canada Day, we remember the history of this country and really its foundations are built on genocide. Specifically here in Waterloo region, we live, work, and play on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Attawandaron peoples. This land was promised to these people as part of the Haldimand Proclamation, which gave them a tract of land running 10 kilometers on either side of the Grand River. It was promised to them basically so that they could live in their traditional ways. And of the, I believe it's 950,000 acres of land that was promised to them, less than 50,000 of those acres still belong to them. So when we celebrate Canada Day, we need to recognize that actually this land, the land that we're on, was stolen in very violent ways, and in a lot of senses that violence is still going on. Indigenous communities still face incredible injustice, missing and murdered Indigenous women, as well as a lack of clean drinking water and other extraction projects that are happening. So environmentally, which I know is going to be a big talk, what we're going to be talking about today, pipelines are being approved to be built through Indigenous territory that they have a right to, and the federal government is not listening or not recognizing that these people have a right to this land, and they have a right to say, no, we do not want this coming through our land. The federal government continues to push these pipelines through, and puts serious risk, puts Indigenous communities in serious risk. For example, their water and the well-being of the land that they live on.
Yeah, you said that we're on the Haldimand Tract,
Mm-hmm.
and that was given to the Haudenosaunee people. How could white colonialist settlers possibly give away land to Indigenous peoples?
Say it again.
Well, you said that the colonialist settlers gave the land to the Haudenosaunee,
Yes.
but it's their land to begin with.
Yes,
So
exactly.
It must have been taken over at some point in the
Yes,
past.
yes.
And I understand that had something to do with the wars where the Haudenosaunee were actually displaced from their territories further south from here.
Yes.
And as a reward for helping fight the battles, they were then given
Yes.
land back.
So with the Haldimand Tract, it was the Haudenosaunee helped the British in the American Revolution, and that piece of land was set aside for them. But obviously, if we go further back in time, that land was still in ownership of them. I do know that the Haudenosaunee peoples were also, I have heard them referred to as not colonizers, but they were a group who sought out others' land. So they had a pretty wide expanse, I believe.
Right. And you said that it was originally populated by the Attawandaron?
Yes, Attawandaron.
Attawandaron.
Yeah.
And most people say it's the neutral.
Neutral, yeah. So I've heard mixed things about this. I've asked, people say different things. Some people say neutral, some people say Attawandaron. Sometimes I say the neutral or Attawandaron because people refer to them in different ways.
Yeah. I'm thinking that neutral is probably a moniker applied by the colonialist settlers.
Yes.
And not what they would have called themselves.
Yes, possibly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the complicated things about this history is that so much has changed, and so much of what was originally, like, these original communities have been lost, and there's been so much mixing and so much like loss of connection to those original communities that it's hard to know exactly what these communities were initially named, how they were initially formed, because so much has happened.
Yeah. And you've been giving land acknowledgements at Waterloo Town Square. What have you been doing out there?
Yeah, so as part of Fridays for Future, we strike on the first Friday of every month in Waterloo Town Square. That is a movement that was kind of sparked by Greta Thunberg, who is a Swedish activist. She's 15 when she started striking. She strikes every single Friday. She basically just started skipping school on Fridays to go protest outside of her local Parliament building, which sparked this worldwide movement. different groups do it differently. Here in the Kitchener and Waterloo area, we do the first Friday of every month. So we have a strike coming up this Friday, the 5th.
Starting at about 1 o'clock at Waterloo Square.
12:30 to 1:30, I
12:30
believe.
to 1:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And basically that is demanding that that the government take serious climate action. While at this point in where we are with the climate crisis, it's bad, it's severe, and we need everyone on board, and we need world leaders especially to be making those kind of mass systemic changes that we need. And so the climate strikes are one way that activists, especially youth, have been able to express their voices, because a lot of youth can't vote. They're not able to kind of vote on the issues that they're concerned about.
And you're still a student yourself at?
I just graduated from the University of Waterloo.
Okay.
So I am kind of like fresh out of the student life. But a lot of the people who do attend the strikes are younger, so still university students or even like public school students.
And we have in the studio with us Kaiha.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And you've been striking.
Yes, I've gone to I went to the first Friday. I spoke at the first Fridays for Future actually in Toronto. That was at Queen's Park. Yeah, that was a great experience. It was the first time I've ever been to a Fridays for Future. But it was really empowering because normally at lots of animal rights protests, you see lots of adults, not so many kids. But it was really like empowering to see so many kids at these protests. So that was really fun. Yeah.
We've had small crowds here in Waterloo. I mean, we were out in the middle of the winter standing in front of Waterloo City Hall, and there's maybe a handful of 20, 25 people, and it grew to a handful of, 50, 100 people. And I think the last couple of marches we've have had 100 or more people coming out.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the big climate strike, the one in the middle of March. That was the
that one was
international
huge.
one.
I think we had 300 or so there,
Wow.
Which was a lot. The last few times, you're right, like at the beginning it was just 20 or so people, and now we have on average, I think, 50 to 100 people usually.
How well attended are yours, Kaiha?
Pardon?
How well are the rallies attended in Toronto?
Well, because of school and lots of things, I haven't gotten the chance to go to that many. But I'd say, based on the one I went to, we have about like 30, 40, about around 50 people as well.
Okay, that's pretty good. And you've spoken at these rallies?
Yes, the first one I did, that was at Queen's Park. Yeah, that was basically... in that speech, I spoke about a lot of facts tying animal agriculture to climate change. For example, animal agriculture, is a leading cause of species extinction, deforestation, freshwater consumption, etc. But livestock and their byproducts account for at least 32,000 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, and that's 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So things like that, basically explaining the big connection between those two. Right.
So it all ties together, right? I mean, it's officially a climate strike, but you're also promoting ethical treatment of animals and the stopping of animal agriculture altogether.
Well, see, at these protests, people are demanding change, basically. But what I kind of talked about in my speech was all the things we need to do, just as individuals, to basically fix all the damage that we've done.
So on my own, I can't stop a pipeline from being built, right? But on my own, I could do things like eat less meat. And if everybody did that, that would go a long way towards reducing that 51% of the greenhouse gases that are being emitted today.
It would.
Yeah. So I've been doing that. I've been eating lentil balls. Lentil balls are my thing. It was funny. I ran for the Green Party back in 2015, and somebody gave me a bag of lentils. It was somebody from the Turkish Cultural Association, and she gave me some other cultural information about Turkey and a bag of Turkish lentils. Now, I actually found out that Canada is one of the biggest producers of pulses, beans and lentils and the like. And so very likely, although these were Turkish lentils, they were likely imported to Turkey from Canada in the first place. So, it all comes around. But, there's a whole bunch of shipping involved in that. So the carbon capacity of that bag of lentils is probably far greater than it needed to be. So.
Well, and I also... I mean, I think individual change is really, really valuable. And I think we need to realize that a lot of us are going to have to adapt our lives as the climate crisis unfolds. But I think a lot of it is that we need governments to make those, like a lot of those choices more accessible, right?
Yeah.
Around eating vegan or more plant-based, around being able to, for example, choose to not have a car by, governments investing in better public transit. Like you said, the government's the one who approves the pipelines, and who puts, taxpayers' money into those extraction projects. So while the individual change is really, really important, I always say we can never forget that putting the pressure on the government, which is what those Fridays for Future strikes,
Right.
I think, are really about, is demanding that the government also take action.
Kaiha, have you had politicians show up at your rallies?
Not that I know of yet.
If they had showed up, would you have let them speak at the protest rally?
Well,
Because they may not say the things that you want them to say. They're probably going to say, yes, everything's under control. We're taking care of things. Don't worry about stuff. Go back to school. That's probably what politicians would have to say. So we've had some candidates speak at the Waterloo rally. I was very privileged to speak one day, encouraging everybody who was out there who was able to vote to go out and vote, and to vote for those politicians who would actually look after climate change. Certainly the ones that we have today aren't doing that. So change your politicians. Yeah. Have you approached the politicians? Have you gone and made a delegation to your MPPs and your MPs to talk to them in person to let them know how important this is to you? Kaiha?
Well, yeah, actually, my family were going to talk to our MP soon. I actually recently spoke at something called Nation Rising in Ottawa on Parliament Hill.
You've been around.
Yeah, that was a few weeks ago. Should I just explain what Nation Rising is for a minute?
Please do. Yes.
Okay. Well, Nation Rising is basically a huge march that happens in Ottawa, Canada's capital. We march from a certain location all the way to Parliament Hill, protesting the fact that our government uses our tax dollars to subsidize animal agriculture, because we know that it's one of the main things that's taking down our earth, right? So it's really important that we have big protests like that. But they invited me to speak on Parliament Hill, and that was a great experience. I love just learning from all these different things that I'm so privileged to get to do. But yeah, that's basically what Nation Rising is. And a lot of something that everyone was doing while we were there is going to talk to our MPs about the effects animal agriculture has on our earth, our waterways, our soil, our environment in general. So yeah, that's something I'm going to do soon. Okay.
And they've listened. You've presented a petition to them, I take it. Lots of signatures of people who are all in favor of this idea to reduce animal agriculture. Because that's what we did in Waterloo. We took petitions. We actually had people sign a huge poster. And I know the MP's office, Bardish Chagar's office, is just right outside the place where we were rallying. So, she couldn't help but notice that we were there. And actually had a delegation of about 4 students going in to present this huge petition. And I hope it's made a difference. But we'll see when the next election takes place and whether or not they actually act. Certainly, Canada has just called for a climate emergency. That they've said that Canada has a climate emergency. So that's a good thing. And then the next day, they approved the pipeline.
I know. Right?
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So what can you do? Well, you can only lobby the politicians to make them do what you think the important thing is. And if they're not doing that, vote them out. Yeah. So having been to Ottawa, having been to Toronto, I don't normally ask my guests this, but I think in this particular case, it's probably important. I don't think you're old enough to vote. No. So how old are you?
I'm 11 years old.
11 years old, and you're politically engaged. You're politically active. You're doing the things that adults aren't doing. And is it making a difference? Have you talked to people who are on board with the idea of fighting climate change?
Oh yeah, most definitely. There's no, in my opinion, there's no choice. The there's actually no choice. Like, our government isn't doing the things that need to be done in order to save our planet.
Mhm.
The majority of the population isn't doing the things that need to be done. So now it's up to me, and there's no choice. Like, me and my generation, in these speeches, I'm always encouraging kids to like, it's our future. We need to stand up. We need to protest. We need more kids doing Fridays for Futures and going to protests. It's really important.
Are you getting a lot of pushback from people saying, this is not doing any good. You should be in school. Think of all the things you're not learning. Anybody told you that?
Well, not directly to me. No, I don't have social media. I don't have a phone. So there's a lot that a lot of comments, things like that, I wouldn't be able to see.
That's probably for the best. Social media is a cesspool. It's not something that you want to engage in, and if you can at all avoid it.
Yeah.
So I've heard of pushback. I mean, I've heard people say exactly that. These kids should be in school. They're not learning the things they need to do.
Well, of course, nobody wants, like, not many people agree when these kids are walking out of school protesting. They're like, oh, that's like no big deal. They'll fix it later.
And yet I think that people who are participating in these climate rallies are learning far more about the political system, how well politicians actually represent their constituents. This is a civics class in real life that you're getting. So my congratulations to you for having done what you've done.
Thank you.
Keep on doing it, because the problem isn't fixed. How long do we have? People say that there's we've got this
United Nations said that we only have 11 years left to prevent irreversible damage.
And that doesn't mean that we can sit back for the next 10 and a half years and just, let things go as they're going.
Yeah, we're in the midst of the 6th mass extinction. Like, we're in a crisis. We're going to face catastrophes. So we need to act accordingly.
Yeah. And if you don't act, if you haven't got it fixed, if it isn't solved in 11 years, then we get runaway greenhouse gas effect, increased, accelerated warming and just extreme weather. All that agriculture that we're trying to protect, the vegetable agriculture, will be unsustainable if everything's a desert.
Yeah, we really just have like 1 or 2 year window of opportunity to address this before, because the research that you're citing says originally 12 years, which came out last fall, so 11 years now.
11 years now.
But it's like you said, we can't wait 10 and a half years to address that. It has to be in the next year.
As much as 20 years ago, scientists were saying that we've got 20 years to fix it, and we haven't fixed it, and we're not dead yet. So people will say that we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And, the planet will survive. The planet's a huge ball of rock. It's going to be fine. It's the people who are living on it that aren't going to be doing so well. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go to a little bit more music. Any final words that you want to leave for people?
Yeah, for if there's any kids listening, this is your time. This is the time that you need to speak up for what you know needs to change. And start going to Fridays for Futures, post videos of yourself and your thoughts on climate change, things like that. Just do whatever you can to help save the planet and our species.
Where is your next rally? Where are you going to be next?
On this Saturday, actually, I'm going to be speaking at the KW Veg Fest.
Aha, excellent. Yeah. Okay, and we'll be talking to Mo Markham in a little while about KW Veg Fest. Just a quick summary of all the organizations that are taking place at these climate strikes. It isn't just one organization. You said Nation Rising is one organization. We've got Rise for Climate here in Waterloo. We have Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing about climate activism that I've noticed in this region is there's lots of different groups doing really good work. And in a way, like, we're all kind of fighting the same fight, although different groups go about it differently. So like Citizens Climate Lobby does a lot of political lobbying. Fridays for Future, we do a lot of protest. Climate Save does a lot of outreach and education, as well as some lobbying. So every group kind of approaches it a little bit differently, which is great because we bring all kinds of different skills to the table, and we're able to work together and share knowledge and also bring in different audiences, right? Because Citizens Climate Lobby, for example, has a different kind of following of people and a different membership group than Fridays for Future. And so when we bring those together, we're kind of stronger overall.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, I promised some music, so let's have a quick listen to Garrett Cato and his new piece called Rivermouth.
Rivermouth, oh. And pay my respects to the ones of love who held the cards but never called my bluff. And pay my respects to my enemies, yeah, for they made me who I'm meant to be. Like the storm that shook the ship at sea. So lay me down in the river mouth, so I can't lay my soul down there. And I don't care if I won't be found, just lay me down in the river mouth, oh. So lay me down in the river mouth, so I can't lay my soul down there. And I don't care if I won't be found, just lay me down in the river. So lay me down in the river mouth, so I can't lay my soul down there. And I don't care if I won't be found, just lay me down in the river mouth, yeah.
In a forgotten corner of a nameless town that's always left behind, I rode a bike around the square to see where I could hide. The moon looked ever restless and the world seemed far and wide. So I sat behind the railway and I listened and I cried. There's a home for every runaway. I refuse to believe your guess. What the chart said yesterday won't compare to the ones who left. And leave I will, but I'll come back to the wise old world that broke my back, and the mud that carved my fingerprints. Reimagine every land I live. I'm the oldest stolen bicycle that I have ever met. In a house 10 blocks from Amsterdam with a pigeon as a pet. I'll trip on untied laces and I'll skip upon the sand. And the old brick roads will lead me through past everything I've said. And I'm just a lonely runaway. I refuse to believe your threat. What was stolen yesterday won't compare to the life that's left. And leave I will, but I'll come back to to the wise old world that broke my back. In the mud that carved my fingerprints, the only other land I'll live.
That's Bridget and Dahlia, a Newfoundland-based folk duo that are proud to announce the release of their newest single, Hide, the first song from their forthcoming album, Runaway, due out on August 1st. But we've got it here first on CKMS FM. Says songwriter Bridget Swift, my original inspiration for Hide was to write about my future home, about some imaginary place I'd live. It ended up turning into a song about dreaming about the future, not knowing what lies ahead, and trying to find a place in the world. Bridget and Dahlia are known for their introspective lyrics and beautiful harmonies. Influenced by songwriters such as Joni Mitchell and Laura Marling, the duo has been building a blossoming career from their home province of Newfoundland and Labrador. They first met in 2010 while performing in Theatre Newfoundland and Labrador's Youth Theatre, and were eventually began sharing their love of music and writing together. Since then, they have won first place in the Statoil Newfound Talent Contest and have been involved in countless local concerts and fundraisings. Not coming to Kitchener-Waterloo anytime soon, I'm afraid. Before that, we were listening to Garrett Cato. Got an email from his agent who says, "Hi, Radio Waterloo team. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to give you a heads up on Canadian-born, Australian-based singer-songwriter Garrett Cato and his upcoming North American tour supporting Ziggy Alberts. Returning to his home country of Canada, where his career began, Garrett will be touring in his support of New Distant Land EP, released this past Friday, June 14th. He will be performing in Waterloo at Maxwell's on July the 6th. So it's a good thing we got his music in now. Pop down to Maxwell's on July 6th and listen to Garrett Cato. Although he now lives in Australia, Garrett Cato's story began back in Vancouver, Canada, where he first discovered his parents' Beatles and Bob Dylan records. Post-high school, he generated local buzz and radio play on early solo music throughout Vancouver while recording between his day job at a skate shop. Garrett moved to Byron Bay in Australia in 2010 on a whim after quitting his job to pursue his passion for music. He started to make a living by busking on the street corners and performing 5 gigs a week in any place where he could find with a stage. It was not until he caught the attention of some of Australia's biggest acts that he was able to take his career to the next level. Garrett is looking ahead to a big year of touring and releasing a stunning collection of new music. So, Maxwell's on July the 6th. I've got the KW Peace events list in front of me, which starts off with today, Monday, July the 1st, with a Canada celebration at Brubaker House. Come and celebrate the launch of the 2019 Gardener in Residence program. Bring your own picnic lunch and blanket chairs and enjoy fun kids' outdoor activities and crafts, such as insect scavenger hunts and plant drawings. Children must be accompanied by an adult from 6 to 9 p.m. at the museum open house. Enjoy a guided historical tour of the authentic 1850s Pennsylvania German Mennonite farmhouse. Free museum admission on Canada Day. Donations are welcome, though. And at 10 p.m., there will be fireworks. There'll be fireworks over Columbia Lake. Please note that this is the final year for the University of Waterloo's Canada Day fireworks, and there are no other activities, food trucks, or performances being organized by University of Waterloo this year. There's limited free parking at the nearby Brubaker House in the open text lots, and walking, biking, or riding public transit is encouraged. Public transit is free for the remainder of the day. You can see that on the kwpeace.ca calendar. On Tuesday, July the 2nd, will be the regular meeting of the WR Nonviolence Group at the Queen Street Commons Cafe. They meet every Tuesday at 7 p.m. to plan for events in the future. The big event coming up will be their Day in the Park on Saturday, July the 20th. On July 3rd, Wednesday, July the 3rd, there is a presentation at the Waterloo Public Library, 50 Years Over the Rainbow, the Stonewall Riots and the Legacy of Judy Garland. There's a registration site. You can click on the link at kwpeace.ca to get registered. Then on the afternoon of this is the historical context here. On the afternoon of June 27th, 1969, Judy Garland's funeral was held in Manhattan, and later that same evening in Greenwich Village, violent demonstrations erupted at the Stonewall Inn, a popular gay venue in the city when it was raided by police. The Stonewall riots are widely considered to be the catalyst of the modern gay rights movement, while Judy Garland's sustained connection with the gay community has only increased since her death. At the Waterloo Public Library, they'll discuss the legacy of Judy Garland and the Stonewall riots and how they continue to influence modern gay culture and society at large. It's presented by Michelle Johnson, a PhD student at Wilfrid Laurier University in history, with a focus on 20th century American social and cultural history. That's presented by PowerShift Waterloo. On Thursday, July the 4th, we have a PhD dissertation defense on constructing China's national food security, power, grain seed markets, and the global political economy, taking place at the Balsillie School of International Affairs at 1 p.m. on Thursday, July the 4th. And of course, on Friday, July the 5th, we have the Fridays for Future Climate Strike for Kitchener-Waterloo, happening on the first Friday of every month. This is from 12:30 to 1:30 at Waterloo Town Square, which is 75 King Street South, just at the corner of Willis Way and King Street. There are strikes happening all over the world. If you're not in Kitchener-Waterloo, then catch the strike wherever it is that you happen to be. And then Saturday, KW Veg Fest will be taking place at Carl's Air Square in Kitchener City Hall. Please join us for the second annual Veg Fest at Kitchener City Hall on Saturday, July the 6th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Looking forward to welcoming vendors such as Parodi Me, Copper Branch, Cafe Pyres, and Zero Waste Bulk Waterloo. We'll be talking to Mo Markham after the hour and finding out a little bit more about KW Veg Fest, the whole purpose behind having a Veg Fest, and just the whole theme of animal welfare and reducing our carbon footprint by reducing our consumption of meat. Let's return to a bit more music. We're listening now to Sublunar Express.
Take the sky, reach up high, feel my soul fade away. There's a new moon rising now in my bones. Take me down below, down below, through the cold. Watch me die, feel my heart beat for you, shine on through tonight. There's a new moon rising in my bones.
We've been listening to Sublunar Express, and that was New Moon, the longest tune on the track, I think, from their album A Dose of Psychedelia. They've just launched their new debut album, and they wanted to touch base with us, CKMS Community Connections, to see if we would be open to playing a song. So we did. This is from an album which includes the song Jet Lag, which we did not actually play, and the band artwork. From their webpage at sublunarexpress.bandcamp.com, they write, Sublunar Express is a Montreal-based power trio formed in 2017 by Dennis Dufour, Emmanuel Heiss, and Daniel Perras. Blending genres such as krautrock, stoner, and atmospheric rock, reuniting broad influences, and an always-moving psychedelic locomotive. Let's have Sublunar Express take us out while I read one last public service announcement from the Cherry Festival. This is also happening on Saturday, July the 6th. The Cherry Park Neighborhood Association is organizing their 12th annual Cherry Festival to be held at Cherry Park in Kitchener on Saturday, July the 6th. Festival will include live music, children's entertainment, including Eric Traplin, food, numerous food vendors, and other vendors, and lots of cherries. The Cherry Train will return this year, as well as a Cherry Cafe and a vintage car show. Kids will have a jumping room, the carousel swing, and mini putt golf and the climbing wall. This region-wide event was launched 12 years ago to enhance community spirit and raise funds for the many activities the Cherry Park Group undertakes, including neighborhood cleanups, adult education programs, community gardens, corn socials, and various other special events. So, do that on Saturday, but also be sure to visit VegFest. Let's have Sublunar Express take us to the top of the hour. And when we come back, we'll talk to Mo Markham and Sophia Kudriavstev and Kaiha about VegFest, animal welfare, animal agriculture, and Extinction Rebellion. Coming up after 11 on CKMS FM 102.7 Radio Waterloo. This is CKMS Community Connections.
CKMS.
Oh, love it. Do it.
CKMS. CKMS.
Radio live at 102.7.
That apple, a pop on the tree, treading water when you found me. I am a hot love, caught me on a long run. You set me from myself, pulled me out from under. I am a hot love, been out here for too long. You take me my demons, you do me like no other. You're the only one. You're the only one. Yeah, you're the only one. You're the only one. Yeah. Begging, legs, you the one that I need. You're the tamer, and I am the beast. I am a hot love, caught me on a long run. You set me from myself, pulled me out from under. I am a hot love, been out here for too long. You take me my demons, you do me like no other. You're the only one. You're the only one. Yeah, you're the only one. You're the only one. Yeah. You put me on balls, hold me till I can't, 'cause I was running circles. Then there you are. You held me down when no one was around. You brought me back to life when nobody could.
Courage, conviction, confidence, and trust. The ethics of jazz.
Coming to Waterloo, we'll be at the Waterloo Jazz Festival. Have a quick look here to see Snaggle is the group that's going to be doing that. And there are Brass Irreverent Jazz Electric Funk Ensemble, often described by media as Canada's answer to Snarky Puppy. They'll be doing a July tour, playing shows in Toronto, but on Friday, July the 19th at 7 p.m., they'll be at the Waterloo Jazz Festival, and then again, Saturday, July the 20th at 7:30 at the TWH Socials Jazz After Dark program. These performances will feature Canada's preeminent jazz trumpet player and Brontosaurus Records CEO Brownman Alley, who we've played on the show before, and will include a cross-section of the entire multi-award-winning Long Slog recording, as well as some brand new compositions, making this a night of funkified electric jazz that audiences will not want to miss. Before that, we heard Shawnee was born with a pull and drive towards music, singing and playing guitar and climbing picnic tables, performing for her family as a toddler in Welland, Ontario. By age 10, Shawnee began writing her own music. After her father's passing, struggling with school, her home life, and identity, Shawnee dealt with life-threatening depression as a young teenager and discovered a drive towards music that ended up becoming the medicine that would catapult her into the passion and journey that she now walks. Today, Shawnee leads her career giving back music as medicine in the same way that it did for her as a young person. Delivering a thunderous voice with songs like Warrior Heart that speak to the suicide crisis with Canada's Indigenous youth, a song of self-identity struggle, Shawnee's music has become anthems of self-empowerment and inspiration. I hope to hear some more of Shawnee's music as her albums are released in the future. We still have in the studio with us Kaiha and Sophia, and we also have Mo Markham. Hi, Mo.
Hello. Thanks so much for having us, Bob.
You're very welcome. On Saturday, July the 6th at 11 o'clock in the morning, things are happening in downtown Kitchener.
Things are happening. We are having our second annual Veg Fest, KW Veg Fest, and there will be 40-some vendors, lots of plant-based food and vendors selling merch, and there will be sanctuaries and other nonprofits and some amazing speakers, including these two young women here in the studio.
Yeah, Kaiha and Sophia that you're speaking of.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's more than just celebrating vegetables to eat.
Celebrating vegetables, that's what we call it. Yeah, I mean, for me, and I Kitchener Waterloo Climate Save is putting the festival on with the City of Kitchener, and lots of amazing support from the Downtown Business Association as well. But for me, it's about helping people to experience vegan food. There will be lots of vegans there as well, but and it's really helping people to understand that vegan food is amazing, and also to getting people active, getting them to think about the planet and to think about the animals and what they can do to make change, to help the rest of the world understand that vegan food is amazing, and for the most part, doesn't taste any different, or if it does, it's actually better. And that there are so many options out there. There will be cheeses, there will be pierogies, there will be hot dogs, there will be chicken burgers. There's just there will be falafel. There's Turkish food coming. There's junk food, all kinds of junk food. There's donuts. There's everything that you can imagine, and good for the planet and good for the animals. So
we've got all the food vendors set up in tents around Carl's Air Square.
That's right, around the fountain there. Yeah.
And right along the street as well. The whole street's blocked off.
Yeah, the street will be blocked off in front of City Hall. Yeah, same as last year. But this year we actually have more vendors. So they'll be spread out a little bit more. That's and great. Then inside in the rotunda is where we'll have the speakers throughout the day. We have different speakers coming up.
Speaking on topics such as?
So we have our first panel is the youth climate activists, and Kaiha is going to be on that panel, and actually Sophia is going to be moderating that panel. There's another amazing young woman from Ottawa, Alice Grandin. She will be speaking as well, and a young boy from Guelph, a 12-year-old from Guelph, will be speaking. His name is Caius. And then the second panel we have is around activism, animal activism and climate activism. And that panel, there will be Jenny McQueen, who we call her Jailbird Jenny. She has been arrested for rescuing piglets from a factory farm. And so that we call that pig trial too. And so she'll talk about that and other activism. And Darren Chang as well, a climate and animal rights activist from Toronto. And Sophia is going to be one of the activists on that panel, talking about her work with University of Waterloo Animal Rights, and also with Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion, et cetera. And Tony D'Amato Storts will be moderating that panel. And then I think after that, we have actually a vegan vet, a veterinarian who is vegan herself and promotes vegan diets for cats and dogs. And she is, Sarah Dodd is from the Ontario Veterinary College in Guelph, and she her specialty is nutrition. So she's studying nutrition around diets, animal friendly and planet friendly diets for cats and dogs. And then we have a naturopath from London, Christine Slonetsky, and she will talk about vegan diets and helping people to understand the ins and outs of different diets. There's so many diets out there. They say you need to be on you need to be on a carb-free diet. You need to be on whatever paleo diet, et cetera. So she's going to help people to understand that. Okay. And then we have a zero waster. Tasha Lobsinger is going to talk about zero waste, including zero waste around animal agriculture and the fashion industry and just plastics in general.
So is your Veg Fest, is that a zero waste event?
We are trying to make it as little waste as possible. So we're asking people to bring containers. Thank you for asking this, Bob. We're asking people to bring containers of their own, and also the vendors have been told that they may not bring plastic disposable containers. They need to bring compostable containers, and we will be bringing our own compostable compost bins for that, to make sure that the stuff gets composted. Unfortunately, the city doesn't have this in place yet. They have a new, I think, sustainable, somebody who's looking at sustainability, but they don't have this in place yet. But so we're bringing our own. We'll bring it home if need be. So,
in fact, I'm heading out to Brantford later today to help with their Canada Day celebrations, and I'll be on the waste diversion team. I'll be sorting stuff into compostables and recyclables.
Awesome.
And hoping to get zero waste out of the deal.
Awesome. You can come next Saturday too, Bob.
I'll help divert your waste for you.
That's great.
That'd be great.
It's awesome.
So Sophia, unfortunately, if I do come to Veg Fest, and I will be coming to Veg Fest, but I'll be there late. So I'm going to miss your panel discussion. Can you give me a quick synopsis of what you're going to be talking about?
Well, for the activist panel, I'm looking specifically at community within activism. So for me, just like a little bit of background on how I came into activism. I started at the University of Waterloo, and first year was like very, very tough for me, adjusting to being in a new place. I didn't have a great roommate situation. I was just very unhappy. And my mom pushed me to join a club, and I joined the Animal Rights Society at UW and made this like wonderful, all these wonderful connections with a bunch of different people, and found my passion for activism. But for me, it's really the thing that drew me in was always the community, like meeting different people from different places with different backgrounds, and not only having a group of people who I work with, but a group of people who I know I can turn to if I'm in need, or who will support me and who will have my back. And over the years, as I've gotten more involved in activism in off campus, I found that community as well, just a very solid support group of people looking out for each other, people helping each other. And I think it's really important when you are doing this work to have that community, because it can be so exhausting sometimes, fighting and sacrificing a lot of your life to be an activist.
Oh yeah.
The community that kind of comes with the activism is just so important to our well-being. And so that's something that that's why I always encourage people to get involved, just because there's this very strong community. Not only are you fighting for something that you believe in and that fighting to make the world better, but you also get this like lovely community of people who are also fighting for the same things and who have your back and who are there for you through it all.
Yeah. So I found that community is pervasive. There are different organizations like some political organizations that are active in sustainability movement, animal rights groups, climate saving moves, other groups, but it's always a handful of the same people. It's 100 people or so that do everything.
Yeah.
They do all the work.
Yeah.
So how many organizations are you actually involved in? I mean, I can think of the Climate Strike and the Extinction Rebellion. You just mentioned some other groups.
So I was involved.
Give them all plugs.
Yeah, so I was involved with the UW Animal Rights Society before I graduated, and they're still active and on campus. Climate Save, and we focus on environmental activism, but kind of from an animal agriculture standpoint. We Extinction Rebellion, who are about nonviolent civil disobedience for the environment. Fridays for Future, we do the strikes, and then I have been. So I'm co-founder of a group called the Ontario Plant-Based Student Association. So this is, and we're going to have a table at Veg Fest. This stemmed from Tony Storts, who is the moderator for one of the panels, was the president of the Guelph plant-based group or animal rights group. And he kind of came up, he figured, there must be other clubs on campuses doing similar work to us. Why don't we get together and share resources and kind of create more of a united front? And so he started reaching out to different clubs across Ontario on different campuses, and he called me and we had a talk, and we kind of created this group that is about, it's a coalition of different student groups. So right now we've got UW Animal Rights Society, Laurier Vegetarian and Vegan Association, Guelph, McMaster, Mac Veggie Club, Ryerson. I believe that's it. Yeah, we've got five clubs on board, and what we do is basically help clubs to strengthen their skills through things like workshops. So we hold a big conference in the fall. It's a full weekend conference with different speakers talking about how to organize an effective event, how to effectively do outreach, how to build community in your club. We also do like smaller workshops. So we'll travel to different campuses, and Tony or I will lead smaller workshops. So that's been really, really fun and allowed me to stay kind of in the loop with the on-campus activism, even though I'm graduated now. Are
you lobbying the universities themselves to provide a more plant-based diet in our cafeterias? As far as I know, the universities, the food facilities there are run by this transnational global organization, Cara Foods, I think. I'm not 100% sure of that.
Yeah, I don't know. So I know Guelph, they were really successful in getting plant-based options on campus a few years ago, like I think 3 or 4 years ago. That's something we have done with UW. So when I was president, we were meeting with the food services on campus. I wasn't aware about all the campuses being kind of like food being provided by one organization.
I think they're all individual contracts, but it's one of these large organizations that's if it's Cara Foods, they're the ones that also supply all the airline food, for example. They provide food to the PepsiCo chain, food preparation stuff at any rate. So if you can lobby, and if you can lobby effectively across multiple campuses, you probably have a really good chance of getting that large organization to not just provide more food-based stuff, but to reduce their carbon footprint by reducing the animal products that they sell.
Definitely, and that's one of the things. I mean, each campus group works a little bit differently. They're all very unique in their own ways, and we want to empower each group in their own unique ways. But that's definitely something, now that you've told me that, I think that would be really interesting to look into. because that's definitely a struggle we had at UW was when we met with the food people. They were hesitant to make any change until it was one of our open houses. I was talking to the head chef, and he was saying that like the number one question at that, I think it was last year's open house, was vegan options in residence. That was like the number one question they got from parents, from incoming students. And that's when the food services kind of like opened their eyes, and all of a sudden they have started providing more vegan options in res and in their other food services.
So aside from being climate friendly, having vegan options is also culturally friendly. There's a lot of different cultures that have restrictions in their diet, but everybody eats plants.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little tricky too, because I mean, at least at UW, I can't speak for other campuses, but at UW, you have like cafeteria food, but you also have like private food vendors. So there's like a Tim Hortons on campus and Starbucks and things like that. And the food services doesn't control those. And there's other food places that are controlled by the Fed's student union. So at UW, at least, we kind of had to come at it from like three different points. But it would be something that we'd want to look into more, depending on where campuses are as well, right? Because some campuses might already have really good, like Guelph already has really good vegan options, so there's not really a lot of work that necessarily needs to be done there.
Is this organization that's doing the lobbying there? Sorry, can you just repeat?
The Ontario Plant-Based Student Association.
Okay, and that's the umbrella group for all the different universities?
Kind of, yeah. Okay. So I think of it more like we are kind of like, because we don't, like as a group, we don't have any connection to campuses. We are more of just a platform where all the campuses can come together and discuss. And so one of the things we have talked about, like at our last fall conference, was lobbying and kind of that more systemic activism. So like talking to people who organize things on campus, like the higher ups.
So as a former campus radio station, CKMS is probably quite welcoming to that sort of activism. Come back sometime and tell us more about it when it's a little bit closer to the actual date.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And I would think too, like as universities are becoming more aware, or maybe hopefully being pushed to become more aware of their carbon footprint as a university, that they should be encouraging this, and you know, it might be possible to get professors and other others on board as well to help with that.
Well, that's the thing is students on campuses have a lot of power, like in campuses in general. Like if you have the right connections, you can make a lot of change on a campus. It's just a lot of people don't know where to look. A lot of people are really trying to just get off the ground with their club. And so we created OBSA, Ontario Plant-Based Student Association, as a way to share our knowledge, because again, every campus is different. Like at the University of Waterloo, the Animal Rights Society, we were very focused on outreach and education. The Guelph group was more focused on like cooking classes and making and like guest speakers and larger events like that, largely centered around food, as well as kind of the lobbying piece. So for example, me working with Tony has been really amazing, because I've been able to learn those lobbying skills and kind of where I can pull strings and how I can get my foot in the door in ways that I was unaware of.
And then
previously.
apply those very same lobbying skills to things like School Strike for Climate and Extinction Rebellion and all the other places that need activism as well. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So you'll be in VegFest. You've got speakers throughout the day inside City Hall in the rotunda there, Kitchener City Hall.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kaiha is one of our speakers.
Kaiha is going to be one of our speakers. Do you want to talk about the youth panel a little bit, Kaiha?
I would like to hear about the youth panel. So Kaiha, tell us all about what you're going to be speaking, because I will sadly be missing your speech. So tell me now.
Well, what my speech is going to be about?
Sure.
My plan is kind of to have two like sections of it, kind of. One being about like a lot of facts, how animal agriculture and climate change are tied together, but also a lot about me, my journey and my activism, and how other kids like my age, younger, older, can get active.
How long have you been doing this? You see, it's a journey, so you've been at it longer than just this one instance of coming and speaking at in Ottawa and in Toronto.
Yeah.
How did you get into this? I mean, what made you do this in the first place?
Well, me and my family went vegan about like 2 years ago now.
Mhm.
I always love, like, I've always had opinions on things. I love to talk about them. I love talking to people, and public speaking is a thing that I'm just like, something I love to do.
Good.
And in this movement, it's how I contribute to this movement. It's how I think of it. But yeah, I went vegan about 2 years ago after my mom saw a documentary. And basically over these past 2 years, I've learned so much more. I've watched different people do speeches. For example, James Aspie, Greta Thunberg, Genesis Butler, all those different vegan activists, and I've just become like, so inspired by all those people, and just felt an urge that I've always gone to like cubes of truth, vigils, things like that, but because I'm a kid, there's a limit to the amount of activism I can do, or what kinds of activism I can do.
Constrained by school or constrained by your age?
Well, my age.
Oh.
Like, for example, at Cubes of Truth, where there's some people that stand at the cube holding signs that say truth, or computers showing slaughterhouse footage. And then there's other people who are talking to the people who come by and start watching the footage and want to ask questions. And
Right.
so people will start talking to them. But because of my age, that's something I wouldn't be able to do. Just go up to somebody and start talking without my parents there. Because we do these in Toronto, right? Like on the streets
Right.
and stuff. So
Right.
it's not safe, really. But
I've never felt unsafe at any of the rallies that I've been to. But then, I'm an old white guy of privilege, so it's very likely that people avoid me. In fact, there have been incidents where there have been uniformed police migrating towards one corner of the rally. So I walk over there in my suit and tie, and suddenly the police dissipate, because you never know what the guy in the suit and tie might be doing there. So I don't know. Position of privilege. I'm afraid I can't fully comprehend the difficulties that you might have as a young person to deal with adults. Do you find that they give you the credibility that you need to make a convincing argument when you speak to adults?
What do you mean by credibility?
Well, very often young people are dismissed as not having enough life experience, not having enough education, not knowing about the issues. But obviously, you know about the issues. You've been speaking all over the place about the issues. Do people recognize that from you as you're speaking to them?
Well, I definitely think some people, because of my age, because I'm a kid, some people find it, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but a lot of people, I guess,
They might be a bit dismissive of.
Yeah, I guess maybe not taking me very seriously because of my age, things like that. But it is great. I have a lot of people who are always encouraging me, and friends at school, for example, will always, because they're kids as well, they get it, even if they may not be activists or they may not be vegan. But yeah, it really depends on the person, because there's some adults that are like, oh my God, it's so amazing to see kids speaking up and doing these things. But there's other people that, I don't know, just don't agree with it, I guess.
So I'm sure that in another 10 years or so, and you'll be as involved as Sophia is in all manner of things. Don't burn out. Let me tell you this in advance.
I will not.
Good. Don't get so involved.
I can promise you that.
Good. Because it does happen. You get so involved and overwhelmed by just the issues. The weight of this existential threat of climate change weighing on you could be a bit of a burden. Don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you.
I'm just going to steal this back for 1 minute. Kaiha, can you talk a little bit also about you were saying that one of the things that you wanted to do was to help other people to get active as well. Can you talk a bit about that, and in terms of the panel and what you're going to talk about there? Oh no. Oh no.
A little bit of a technical issue here. The microphone has come dislodged from the arm. Go ahead, Kaiha.
Okay. Yeah, here I am. Yes. So getting people more active. Yeah, that's definitely something that's going to be a part of my my speech on Saturday on the panel. As much, like, it's very important to me that I'm doing activism, things like that. But another thing that's really big to focus on is getting other people to do activism. Like a lot of activists focus on convincing people to change, and like that's what activism is all about. But the way I see it, of course, you want to convince people that what you're doing is the right thing to do, things like that. But turning people into activists is definitely like a huge thing. Like the more people you have protesting, the more serious the people are going to take you more seriously. Whereas like if you have 10 people at a protest, like all these just happen to be here. But if you have like 100 people at a protest, think of like how huge of an impact that's going to have on everybody that's watching, people on the streets, people, if you're protesting in front of your parliament buildings, people are going to see that, right? But yeah, definitely getting more people active, encouraging them, giving them the facts, everything they would need to know. That's a huge part of, my life as an activist.
Is there politics in your future?
For prime minister, things like that.
I found that going out to rallies and waving signs and shouting slogans is lots of fun, but it doesn't necessarily influence politicians to make the changes that need to be made. And so for myself, I've gotten involved in politics to make those changes myself.
It's something I've always thought about. Like we're always protesting politicians or prime minister asking for change. I'm like, well, why don't we just become those politicians, those like become the government, things like that. Like we could become those people and then like there wouldn't be a problem. So yeah, when I get older, I'm going to look into it, things like that.
That's excellent. Your words are heartwarming to me because that's exactly the kind of is to make that change themselves. And political change is probably the biggest thing that can actually make a difference. Go ahead, Mo.
And I was going to say too, for those of us who can't go there, there are many other ways of being involved as well. And, I think one of the things that Kaiha has talked about and that Greta Thunberg has talked about as well is, we shouldn't be leaving this to the kids. Our politicians should be doing something and they're not. Kaiha has done all kinds of activism. So has Sophia. They spend so many hours doing this. We need more people to be involved. We need more people to be doing the work. Kaiha has spoken at a number of rallies. She that has how many people have seen it now?
I don't even know.
Okay, like 100,000 people or something have seen this.
Okay.
This 120,000 or something have seen this video that Kaiha made. To help people to understand the things that they need to do to make change. And Kitchener Waterloo Climate Save is part of the Climate Save movement. It's part of a worldwide movement, and we have over 100 groups around the world, and we're growing quite quickly. But we also one of the things or some of the things that we do in like we show films, we show videos, we try to get people active and out. We help with the Fridays for Future strikes and with Extinction Rebellion, because those are two groups that are growing really quickly, and people are doing the things that are needed to make change as quickly as possible, because that's what we need to do. So Extinction Rebellion, one of the things they talk to people about is making change by doing civil disobedience, and
nonviolent
civil disobedience, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like the studies have actually shown that that's what makes change in the long term. I mean, so many of us have been doing climate work and environmental work for 20 and 30 years, and our governments are doing the opposite, like they're working against us, right?
Yes.
Our current governments, provincially and federally, are doing that. All over the world, this is happening.
Recently, I'm not sure if it was the government that said that, all you climate and pipeline activists, you're under surveillance. We're watching what you're doing. That's a chilling effect. That's going to stop people from wanting to be engaged.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? At this point, what can they do? I mean, I feel like we need to make everything about climate at this point. There isn't anything left that matters as much. I mean, if we think about the idea that these young people may not see old age if we can't turn things around in the next couple of years, I mean, that's appalling. And we need to make everything that we do about making change. And so what Extinction Rebellion does, and we're, getting off the ground slowly, I think, in Canada, but we need as many people involved as possible. But in other parts of the world, England, where they started, they've done quite a bit. And so the studies show that they need about 3.5% of the population involved and protesting in order to make change. And this has been effective in many different regimes in the past. And people think of it that there's something, well, it's illegal, what you're doing. I mean, but think about, if you think about all of the important changes that we've made in our societies in the past, have been people doing civil disobedience. I wouldn't have the right to vote or own property if there weren't women who had gone out and done, done civil disobedience. The civil rights movement, that's about civil disobedience. I mean, people who were hiding slaves and helping them to escape, that was civil disobedience. I mean, the legality, what is it? Legality is not about right. What's legal is not about what's right. It's about who has the power.
Just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's just.
Exactly.
Justice and legality are two different concepts.
It's about who has the power. So the people who have the power right now are not making change. They're not doing what we need to do fast enough to make change. And the people who are going to, people are already dying all over the world, right? The heat waves.
Just this past week in Europe.
Absolutely.
That's attributed to the heat wave that's happening there. And people are now admitting that this heat is caused by the global climate change, and that's directly caused by fossil fuel emissions.
Fossil fuel and animal agriculture and all of the stupid things that we're doing and our governments are promoting,
right? A lot of the agriculture is caused by fossil fuel stuff. The artificial fertilizers are based on fossil fuels, and a lot of the transportation for the animal goods are.
But also the greenhouse gas emissions that the animals themselves are creating. I mean, the systems that they're destroying, the methane gas actually burns 20 to 30 times hotter than carbon. And it also, then CO2, and it also dissipates much more quickly.
Absorptive effect of the methane. The methane traps the infrared radiation and carbon dioxide. On the other hand, I've just read that the methane emissions coming from places like the Arctic, where the methane is sequestered as frozen methane, is really an insignificant portion of the methane emissions that are taking place. It's the methane emissions from animal agriculture that are causing the bulk of the methane.
And the United Nations says that animal agriculture creates more greenhouse gas emissions in general than transportation. And yet our governments are completely ignoring this. Well, of course, they're ignoring fossil fuels too. They're putting our money into fossil fuel infrastructure, as we know, buying pipelines and brilliant things like this. And they're giving billions of dollars in subsidies to animal agriculture. And that's what the Nation Rising was about, fighting that. So if we don't stand up and, do civil disobedience, if we don't stand up in the streets and say, this is, Ireland has now declared a climate emergency, right? Which they weren't willing to do before. So standing up for what's right. And, if you have to get arrested to do it, think about the alternatives. You could get arrested, or you can let the planet die and let all of these kids die and let people die all over the world, right?
So you said 3.5% of the population has to be up and active and protesting.
Absolutely.
So looking at just Waterloo City by itself, about 150,000 people or so. You need
you have to do the math there.
Yeah. So you need about 4,500 people out in that square protesting, being anywhere close to those numbers for protesting.
And we need to. Yeah. But you know what? And I will say, the media is culpable in killing the planet because they're not talking about the issue as much.
In so many things, because a lot of the media is dependent on government subsidies. And they're not going to advocate for things that the government is doing wrong.
A lot of them,
for fear of losing those subsidies.
Yeah, a lot of them are privately owned too, and they're owned by Rob. What am I calling you, Bob? Sorry, Bob. I've known Bob for years. Sorry, Bob. But they're privately owned, and they're these middle-aged white guys who don't really care.
And
You
even the
know,
privately owned ones get subsidies. There's just a big bailout of the newspapers
do
a
they?
couple of years
That's
back. Yeah.
frightening to
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
about.
Well, I don't watch the news, like TV news, very often, but I was at the dentist's, and it was during like the Raptors
Oh,
stuff, and they're talking about flooding on the Toronto Islands, and they're talking about Raptors game, and then talk about how people are being evacuated from their homes because of forest fires, and then Raptors game.
Yes.
It's like when we talk about these events that are linked to the climate crisis, the news is not putting it in that context. It's just saying, oh, there's flooding happening on the Toronto Islands. Now let's switch to the Raptors game, right?
And then they break for a commercial by some pipeline company.
Yes, exactly.
And so
Yeah.
this is why the media isn't going to be working towards mitigating climate
Mhm.
change, because they're being paid by the
Mhm.
companies that
Mhm.
their livelihood depends
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
But there
Destroying
are
the planet.
places where they're. I'm sorry, Bob. There are places where they're talking about it more, and Quebec is one of those places. And Quebec, many municipalities and towns in Quebec have signed on to the pact. That they
Yes.
and saying that yes, climate is an issue, and we will take part in trying to make change. And I mean, Quebec, when they do rallies, so the March 15th rally, we had 300 people here in KW for our youth climate strike.
Mhm.
Toronto and Ottawa, I think maybe had like 1,000 or so, which was awesome. Montreal had 150,000 people.
Yes.
Their media is talking about climate change almost every day. So our media is culpable. The CBC has never once actually been to our youth climate strikes. We've had the Record, we've had CTV, we've had the Cord, the Laurier Cord, and the Imprint from the University of Waterloo, and Kitchener Today as well.
And here you are on CKMS Community Connections.
And now we have CKMS Community Connections. Awesome. But the CBC has never shown up, and that's a
Yes.
public broadcasting company, and we have
Who
notified
are
them
more
all the time.
dependent on the largesse of the government than any of the private medias.
Right. And also their board of directors, I think, is pretty conservative. So we need to attack it from all angles. We need governments involved. We need media involved. We need, more people involved. We need more people out and doing activism. I mean, why are we leaving this to the kids? Like why should an 11-year-old be spending her time trying to make this change when the adults are not doing anything?
Yeah.
We need adults involved.
Yes.
We need adults involved
Injustice
all
right
over the
there.
place.
Mhm.
What's that?
There's injustice right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, what's my homework? What can I do to make things better? I mean, of all the things we've talked about today, I mean, between Veg Fest and Extinction Rebellion and the climate rallies and the nation rising, what should I do next?
Well, I mean, I think you're doing so much already, Bob. You're making people aware of the issues
Okay.
on media. You're fighting in other venues with the Green Party, helping people to make people aware,
Spreading knowledge, spreading information.
right.
Yeah.
You're one of those adults who comes out to the youth climate strikes and supports us in lots of ways. I don't know, Sophia, do you have other suggestions?
Yeah, I think you personally, Bob, you're on the right track. I think more broadly, like people in general, I would just encourage to get involved in any way. Like an hour on the first Friday of every month is not a huge commitment to just come out and support. And I've found with this community of activists, once you attend one event, you kind of get, and you meet someone, specifically Mo, you get attached onto email threads, and there are so many ways to get involved, just so many ways to get involved in different things for different people. So it's just getting your foot in the door, and those opportunities are not hard to find.
We talked briefly about climate emergency, and you're involved in a climate emergency task force within Waterloo region as well.
Yeah. So and that's the thing when we talked about media that I was thinking, like, the issue here is that the public is not aware of how drastic this crisis is. They're starting to wake up. I think Greta and the Fridays for Future has really sparked a much larger dialogue around climate issues. But I still talk to a lot of people who aren't aware of the IPCC report, who aren't aware that like, this is a crisis that we're facing and we need to take action. And I think it's because of, lack of media attention when we talk about flooding on the Toronto Islands. It's just some weather pattern. It's not linked to the crisis.
I had somebody tell me that, Toronto isn't suffering any of the climate effects. And yet there's all these pictures of the islands flooding, the underpasses by the GO train, just submerging cars. There is cost to that. People are paying already to mitigate or to remediate the things that have been destroyed by climate change.
And I think as an activist doing this work, it's very easy to forget that, like, when I log onto Facebook, all I see on my feed is climate crisis stuff. But other people, they don't see it at all. And so with the climate emergency declaration, the thinking behind that is a large part of it is that it's symbolic. So when, a country or a municipality declares a climate emergency, then it gets news coverage. People kind of wake up a little bit.
Is there a danger of diluting that message by having all these different municipalities declare climate emergency? So far in Waterloo Region, only Kitchener has done so.
Yeah. So I think initially when the first climate, I think Vancouver was the first one in Canada to declare the climate emergency. It was very large and a lot of people we're giving it attention. And slowly, as more and more municipalities they've been getting less and less attention. I do think that although the climate emergency declarations are important for their symbolic value, I think they should also be actionable. So in Kitchener, we wanted the climate emergency plus a carbon budget, which would be similar to like a financial budget. When the city goes through with a project, they have to make sure that they have kind of enough carbon emissions left for that project.
Right.
That didn't get passed. That was put kind of on the back burner for staff to look at, which was, I think it was great that we declared a climate emergency. It was a little bit disappointing for me to not see that actionable item. The thinking behind the actionable piece is that, at this point, federal government is obviously not doing much. They declared a climate emergency and then approved a pipeline the next day.
Right.
The provincial government isn't taking this seriously either. So
the provincial government is a write-off for the next 3 years, to be quite perfectly honest.
Yeah. So the thinking is kind of bringing it from the bottom up. So if all municipalities, especially because municipalities bear the brunt of the cost of the climate crisis, right? Any damage to roads, to buildings, and different infrastructure, that's paid for by the city. So if the city starts taking action, then we can kind of work our way up.
Do you know what the next target municipality is for the Climate Emergency Task Force?
So I believe next we're going to be going for Waterloo.
City of Waterloo?
City of Waterloo, yes. We kind of had a whole map. Initially we thought Kitchener and then is it Wellington?
There's Wellesley, Woolwich, and Wilmot.
One of the W's.
One of the W's
was the next one, but I was actually approached at one of our climate strikes by a councillor for the city of Waterloo who said that they are very on board and that they'd like to see what they can do going forward. So I think that they will be our next. Yeah.
This past fall's municipal election gave me hope because we've elected so many progressive councillors, both in the townships and in the urban areas.
Yeah, the councillors have been great. And we will be approaching all of the councils in Waterloo Region. So that's all part of the whole deal. And it gives me hope that there are so many climate groups involved in this climate emergency, and that so many of the climate and environmental groups in the region have come together in the past year. First, I think originally to fight Bill 66, Doug Ford's Bill 66.
Right. We saw groups coming together from all over the region, 20 odd groups, all cooperating and working together and delegating all the different municipalities. And it made a difference there because that legislation was repealed.
I didn't know if you wanted to add something about going forward, and then I was going to talk about the fall, what's happening in the fall in terms of climate strikes as well. Kaiha, did you have anything to add in terms of, what people need to do going forward? Did you want to add anything to that?
What do you think that I should be doing next, Guy? What do you think Bob needs
to
What's my homework?
Well, like Mo said, you're already doing a lot by just like having us here, spreading the word, things like that, and showing up to Fridays for Future, supporting other activists, which is amazing. All I can say to you and to other people who may be listening to this or on Instagram seeing things about the climate crisis, activists, things like that. Look into it and become an activist. Become one of the people who are fighting for change, because it's the people are the whole movement. Like this, people are what we need. We need people to become activists, to wake up, to like come to terms with what's happening. And I feel like lots of people are kind of living in their own bubble a lot of the time, and they need to pop the bubble. They need to wake up. They need to find out what's happening. You can go on Instagram and find, like, you can follow Mo and Sophia, things like that. Not me yet, because I don't have an Instagram account.
That's all right.
But yeah, just you need to become an activist. You need to fight for future generations, for my future, for my generation's future. And yeah.
Upcoming events then on Friday. What do we have? Climate strike at
This
Waterloo
Friday, the Fridays for Future Youth Climate Strike at Waterloo Town Square. Again, 12:30 to 1:30. And then it will be the first Friday in August as well.
All right.
And then in September, we haven't actually figured out the date. Don't tell anybody that yet.
This is radio. Everybody knows that.
Oh no. But it will likely be September 20th. It's going to be later. It's not going to be the first Friday. Obviously, the kids are just getting back to school, so that won't make any sense. But also there is a week of rebellion planned around the world, a week of climate strikes. Earth Strike, I believe, is having a strike on the September 27th. So that whole week from September 20th to the 27th, there will be massive strikes around the world, helping people to get the fact that we need to make change. And here in Canada, we need to help people to get to understand that before our October election. People need to vote for climate. There is nothing else that matters at this point. Nothing else. I think if we elect a party that is going to take us middle of the road and thinks that we can do things really gradually, if we elect a party like that in October, we're going down. Canada is heating at twice the rate of the rest of the world. Canada has got some serious changes to make. We need to act like we have this window of opportunity, as Sophia said earlier. We need to act like we're in a war zone, right? This is a war zone, right?
That's what the Green New Deal activists treat the climate emergency like it was a wartime emergency.
Absolutely.
And in the past, we've seen that, right? With world wars, overnight, basically, a country is able to change its economic structure, how people consume, how people produce, the kind of work people are doing. And I think the problem is that the current government is not seeing the climate crisis as that kind of emergency, that kind of like, we need the overnight change.
Right. People traveled differently. They ate differently, and we need to get them to understand that, or we're all going down. And some of them have children, many of them have children. So I don't understand how they can not be on board with this, But anyway, the other event that is coming up, of course, as we've already spoken, is on this Saturday, July 6th at Kitchener City Hall. KW Veg Fest will be happening.
Come visit your favorite vegetables.
Say again?
Come visit your favorite vegetables.
Come out and visit some amazing food, some amazing speakers.
Something about sanctuaries. You said sanctuaries are...
Yes, there will be some sanctuaries who will be there. The sanctuaries, they're farmed animal sanctuaries. So animals who were rescued from the animal agriculture. So animals who were intended for food or for their bodies to be used for milk or eggs, etc. Those animals, many of them, nowhere near enough of them, live on sanctuaries now, so that they can live out a peaceful life. So there are, I think there are, the sanctuaries who will be coming are Carol Organics, Glow, Frog Hollow, And I know also Tamara from our closest sanctuary is a micro sanctuary
Right.
in Cambridge, outside of Cambridge. Tamara Brown has dozens of chickens and maybe half a dozen roosters as well. And she will be introducing the vegan vet who will be speaking. And Sarah Dodd, who is the vegan vet who is speaking about companion animals, she also is a vet who serves many of the sanctuaries.
That's Veg Fest Saturday at Carlsar Square, in front of Kitchener City Hall, from 11 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night.
6 p.m. July
Okay.
6th.
So thank you very much, Mo Markham, for telling us all about Veg Fest. Thank you very much, Sophia Kudriavstev, for telling us about everything else. And thank you ever so much, Kaiha, for coming out, telling us how important all this is. This is CKMS Community Connections from Radio Waterloo, CKMS FM 102.7. My name is Bob Jonkman. We'll be back next Monday, 10 o'clock, with more Community Connections. Taking us is Ambitron and Atelier Electro.
This is CKMS 102.7 FM in Waterloo Region, radiowaterloo.ca on the web.